Well, hello and good afternoon. Welcome to A Walk in My Shoes. This is Dan Vasquez, your host, and today we're so excited and so honored to have with us Judge Mingo. Thank you so much, Judge Mingo, for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's delighted to
We,
be here.
we're so happy, and we've been looking forward for this time. And
Wonderful.
we are interested in hearing about your story, learning about your career path. So let's start there. Let's start with your personal story. Tell us, how did all of this started? When did it started, and how did you end up becoming a judge?
Oh, okay, wonderful. Well, I'm gonna go back a little ways. I grew up in Canton, Ohio, and I am one of six children. There are three girls and three boys in my family, and I am number five. And we had our struggles as a family. I came from a low income family. I lived in public housing all of my life from 0 to 18. And it was a struggle for my parents. My father was a steel worker. My mother was periodically employed, but for the most part, she was home with us kids. And so it was difficult for my family. It was always important for my mother and father that their children, and in particular their daughters, be able to take care of themselves and stand on their own 2 feet. So that sort of independence was always important to my parents. It was also important for them that we get our education. In spite of the poverty that we were growing up in, my parents knew that the best way out for us would be to do all that we could to get the most education that we could. And so when it came time for me to graduate from high school, my father sort of said, "You have two choices. You can either go to med school or you can go to law school." And so, and now keep in mind that I grew up during the era of the Cosby Show, and so we watched Dr. Huxtable and Mr. Huxtable. Dr. Huxtable, of course, was an MD, and Mrs. Huxtable had her Juris Doctor, and they seemed to live this fabulous life. So, certainly that appealed to me. I knew that I was not good in the sciences, and I knew that med school was never going to work out for me. I didn't think I could pass that hurdle. I just, science just wasn't my thing. But I knew that law school, I felt like that was an achievable goal for me. I had always had an interest in politics. I'd always had an interest in history and English and all of those things that you sort of think of when you think about lawyers and some of the classes and courses that they take over the years. So I told my dad, all right, I will pursue law school. So, with that said, I initially started at Ohio University and then went ahead and transferred to Ohio State. As I said, I had an interest in politics, so I went ahead and I majored in political science at Ohio State.
Okay.
And once I completed my 4 year bachelor's degree, I applied to law school and I went to Capital University right here in Columbus. And that was really my path to becoming a Juris Doctor and completing law school. My father simply did not give me a choice, and God bless him, my late father rather. God bless him for pushing me forward and for having that vision of his daughters, being able to support themselves and not having to depend on anyone to meet our needs and that sort of thing. So that was really my path to law school, that parental push that is often so
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
Well, it seems like your parents were just amazing individuals that put you to do the best version of yourself.
That's exactly it. They were amazing individuals that really did, from the very beginning, push me to be the best version of myself. And so, certainly, there were times along the way where I was exhausted and, questioned whether or not this was the right path for me. But I'm thankful that they continue to encourage me to push forward and to get that Juris Doctor and then go on to take the bar exam and become an
How
attorney.
many did you had any other family member that was previously a judge in your family, or?
No, I didn't. But you know what? At the time I was going through undergraduate at Ohio State in political
Mhm.
science, I had an older brother it's about 15 months older, Clarence Mingo, who was the former Franklin County auditor. He was actually we went to school together. We went through undergraduate together, and we also applied to law school at the same time. We got in at the same time. He got into
Wow.
Ohio State, and I got into Capital. So we went through undergraduate and law school together. And so he became a lawyer, and he and I had a brief moment in time where we practiced together in Franklin County Domestic Relations and Juvenile Court. We did that for
Wow.
a while. It was nice practicing side by side with my brother. From there, he went on to become the auditor, and I chose some other paths here. But so no, I am the family's the
Wow.
first judge.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, I would have to say though, I certainly never envisioned myself being a judge. It wasn't something
Uh-huh.
that I just never imagined it. Now that I am a judge, I've been in this role now for about 2.5 years. I can't imagine
Wow.
doing anything else with
Uh-huh.
my life. I feel like this is where I was always meant to serve. I think I mentioned that public service was so important to my parents, and they
Mhm.
always taught us that it was our duty and our obligation to give back to our community. In
Wow.
being the best version of ourselves, we also needed
Yeah.
to reach back to those who perhaps were not as fortunate. And so the best way to do that would be public service. So
Wow.
public service has certainly been always been a part of my career, but just never dreamed that I would have the opportunity to serve from the seat that I'm in. And so it's been such an honor and just a welcome surprise in my
Yeah.
life.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
So, in order for somebody to become a judge, they do have to have political science and they have to pass the bar exam as well.
Yes. So, in order to become a judge, you could major in just about anything. You could major in dance, you could major in art, you could major in,
Wow.
you could be pre med. You could really have a degree in any undergraduate coursework. But you do have to complete 4 years of college. You have to
Okay.
then complete 3 years of law school, and then go on to pass the Ohio bar exam. So you're looking at about a 7.5 year endeavor, all total. And then once you complete the bar exam and you pass, then you have to practice for some time. And forgive me, it escapes me how many years you have to practice as an attorney before
Okay.
you're eligible to become run for office as a judge. I believe it's 7 years in Ohio, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. But you do
Okay.
have to practice for some time before becoming a judge. And I had actually been practicing for about 11 years. I'd done a variety of things. I'd spent most of my career in public practice. I'd worked for the Ohio Auditor of State as an assistant legal counsel.
Okay.
Um, at the time that I was working, just prior to becoming a judge, rather, I had been working for the Franklin County prosecutor, and I'd been there for about 6 months. And amazingly enough, the I was assigned to work in the environmental division. And after about 6 months, an opening in the environmental courts became available. The judge who was previously here, he won a seat in the common pleas court. So
Oh,
this
wow.
seat was vacated, and the Governor John Kasich, he needed to appoint someone to take the bench in this court. And, as luck and I say as God would have it, he blessed me and I was appointed to this seat, and here I sit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank
That's just
you.
amazing.
Yeah.
And
Thank you so much.
we're just so happy that you're able to sit down with us and to let us see, through the window on what it's like to,
Yeah.
to sit on that seat. And we're certainly grateful for the service that you're providing to the city. But can you tell us, like, from a day to day, what are some of the things that you enjoy the most in what you do on a daily basis?
Yeah. It is when I truly mean this, it is such an honor to be able to serve the public in the capacity of a sitting judge. It really is. I mean, when you think about judges and the authority that they are given to exercise, over the public. It's an awesome responsibility. And really, for me, it's the opportunity every day to take that bench and to see
Mm,
the humanity and the people that come before me.
mhm.
Every individual who walks into that courtroom, they have a story. Most
Yeah.
of the people that walk in, they obviously don't want to be here.
Mm,
Usually, there's a story or a circumstance that led them to my courtroom. I certainly haven't explained it, but in the environmental court, I hear all of Franklin County's nuisance property cases.
wow.
So essentially, if a property is out of compliance with zoning, building, health, or
Mhm.
building codes, the city can file a complaint, and that complaint comes to environmental court. I
Okay.
also hear all of the cases involving properties that are being used for illegal activities. So, say for instance, if a home or a commercial property is being used for drug trafficking or human trafficking or prostitution, the property portion of that case comes into environmental court. Most of the defendants that we see in environmental, they're here because for one reason or another, life circumstances has not allowed them to keep their property up to code. Normally, it's a lack of financial ability to keep that property up to code. And so every day I have the opportunity to really look out from that bench and see the humanity, understand the circumstances that brought the individual into environmental, and then certainly do all that I can to one, assist that defendant, and two, assist the community with getting that property into compliance so that it doesn't breed crime and unsavory activity. So that
Wow.
really and truly
It's
is
so
the best part of my job.
it is so interesting, and I can only imagine all the things that you have to do and the research
Yeah,
that you have to get into,
yeah.
and I'm sure you still have to do a lot of the reading and things like that. Now, without going into a whole lot of detail, can you tell us a little bit about one of the most difficult cases that you've encountered in your experience as a judge?
Wow. Let me think about that. Yeah. I had a case with a gentleman. Certainly, I've had. Let me just tell you. Currently, I have 1,500 cases on
Oh
my
my goodness!
docket. So
Wow.
there are just so many, and each one
Mhm.
comes with a story. But there was one particular gentleman that stood out to me. He was in my court because his family home was not in compliance with Columbus City Code. And
Mm,
there were so many things that he needed to do to get this property in compliance, and he did not have the financial ability to do it. But one of the things that he had promised his wife on her deathbed was that he would maintain that family home and ensure that he would keep it so that the children could inherit the home when they got older. And it was heartbreaking because, this gentleman had no means, no financial means to get the property into compliance. And for him, coming into the courtroom and having to face a judge and, possibly risk a lien being placed on his home and possibly in the future losing that home, for him, he was breaking a promise. He was breaking a promise that he had
wow.
made to his wife on her deathbed. And so that was
Wow.
heartbreaking. Certainly, I wanted to do all that I could to help this gentleman and to link him to resources within the community. But as you know, there's never enough money to go around. There are never enough resources to help those in need. And
Yeah.
this gentleman was absolutely desperate to get his property into compliance so that the family home wasn't in jeopardy and so that he
Mm,
could keep that promise to his wife to give it to their children, in the future. And so we did end up working with him, and he did not lose his home. I know that
oh,
he
good.
currently still struggles
Mhm.
financially, but it was a heartbreaking case. It was just such a it really captures what we see on a daily basis in environmental and just the everyday human struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that leads me to another question that I had is in the position that you have in the office in which you serve, you get to hear all kinds of tragic stories and the difficulties, and you were talking about the humanity size. What do you do as an individual to keep a positive attitude, even though you hear all the negative first?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how I could have a negative attitude. I don't know how, when I see some of the conditions in which people are, they don't have a choice in how they are living. When I see
Mhm.
some of the conditions that their circumstances in life have dictated that they live in, it's difficult for me to really have a bad day. It really is. Uh,
Mm.
I am so blessed and so fortunate that I had parents that, you know, encouraged me to go to school, to get my education. And I'm so blessed that in spite of the poverty that I grew up in, I was able to, complete school, become gainfully employed, and be able to provide for my family. And so when
Mm.
I see people come into the courtroom and they live in, less than desirable conditions, it honestly really isn't hard for me to keep a positive attitude. I have nothing to complain about. I have nothing, to be upset about, given these circumstances that so many of the folks who come before me are living in. And so that really keeps me in the spirit of being thankful for what I have,
Mm.
and certainly doing all that I can to help those that are the most vulnerable with us.
Oh my goodness, that is so good and that is so important.
Oh,
Keeping that
thank you.
positive attitude, and
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
we're still, we're just so excited, uh, and so happy to to hear that we have people like this serving in our city, and
Oh,
um,
thank you.
so in your position, this position that you hold right now, this is something that you're appointed. Is that right?
Well,
Or
so because there was a vacancy in environmental court, the governor by law is responsible for appointing someone to fill that vacancy. So that I was appointed to the bench in 2019, but Ohio law required me then to run for election, to run for this office in the
uh
November 2019 election. So I did run for office and I did win in 2019. However, I won the right to complete the term of the previous judge. So, in other
okay.
words, the previous judge, his term will expire, I think, in January of 2022. So, I'm
Mhm.
actually on the ballot again in Franklin County this year,
Oh,
so
that's
that
great.
if I win, I can begin my own 6 year term. So I'm
Oh,
working hard and hoping that I will be successful so that I can continue to serve as Franklin County's environmental court judge.
oh, that's fantastic. That's great.
Yeah, thank
Well,
you.
we wish you the best on that.
Thank
Um,
you. I appreciate it.
just just right quick, the last year was a very difficult year to everyone.
Yeah.
How was your job affected? How was the life of a judge affected during last year?
Yeah, you know what? The short answer is really the need for justice never stops.
Mm.
Pandemic, come what may. The courthouse must always remain open to the public. Justice must go on. And so, really, it caused us to obviously slow down a bit. We never officially closed the courthouse. My courtroom was never closed. We were always open for
Wow.
business. We had to change the way we do business.
Uh-huh.
Certainly, we went from hearing, 100 cases a day to 20 cases a day.
Wow.
And we tried to prioritize the cases that we heard. So, we would, for instance, the cases involving properties where life and safety were at risk. Those would
Mm.
be the drug houses within Franklin County. Those types of cases we considered emergency cases, and they needed to be heard on an emergency basis. So essentially, we continued to function. We did so observing all of the COVID protocols,
Uh-huh.
but justice had to go on, and so we continued
Wow.
to work through that very cautiously and very carefully. But we
Yeah.
had to make sure that the court continued to run.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And now,
Thank you.
as far as what would you tell a young person that will be watching this interview, and they are thinking, yeah, this is something that I want to do. This is something that I would like to achieve.
Yeah.
What would you tell them?
I would say start thinking. I would really say start thinking now. Start thinking about opportunities to get some exposure. The courthouse is open to the public. You can walk into, any courtroom you'd like and just sort of take a seat and observe some of the roles that are played out in the courtroom. You can observe the judge, the prosecutors, the defense attorneys, the staff members that work within the courthouse. There's so much opportunity to just sort of observe and soak it in. That's always something that I would encourage young students to do. There's so much to see in the courthouse, and I think you would
Mm,
be amazed at some of the cases that we hear in the environmental division. But the other thing I would do too is if a young person should probably start thinking in advance, perhaps looking at some of the colleges and law schools that they could envision attending. Very often, the requirements for those programs are listed online. I would start looking at those and
mhm,
seeing how you could start fulfilling some of those requirements now. I have a niece who is college age and she is currently applying to schools. And one of the questions that the application asked her was, what's been your experience with leadership in diversity and inclusion? And,
mhm,
she looked at me and said, I'm a senior in high school. I had no idea that, my college applications would require me to have some experience in
mm,
leadership in the area of diversity and inclusion. So, it wouldn't hurt to just start taking a look at those application requirements and see what those look like, and perhaps start building on fulfilling some of those requirements while you still have time in high school. And then also, I would reach out. You would be amazed at what some of the attorneys in the Columbus bar would be willing to do in order to get you some experience with them. If you can intern or if you can even shadow an attorney or even a judge. I always welcome interns in the environmental division. I'm always happy to have young people shadow and sit in the courtroom. So reaching out, people are certainly probably more happy and more excited than these students would probably envision to have them
mm, yeah.
shadow and sort of hang out in the office and take it all in. But I think it's so important to just be proactive and reach out and, tap into the resources that you have around you.
Judge Mingo, do you still get nervous, or have you ever been nervous in the courtroom when you walking in?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I have my moments, though. I would have to say I think I'm most comfortable on the bench. Other than at home, I can't think of a place where I'm more comfortable.
Wow.
If I am nervous, it's probably for a reason that it would not be obvious to most. It's usually something that's going on in my mind about the case, about something in particular about the case. But at this point, it's such serious work and it's such important work that I really don't have
Mhm,
time to get nervous.
yeah.
Every day I take that bench and do my best to be the best judge that I can be the best
Mhm,
informed, most
mhm,
knowledgeable judge that I can be. And so
mm.
all that I can do is really give it my best. So no time for nerves. It's just showtime. Once I
Yes,
take that
yes.
seat, it's showtime. I,
You're
I gotta go.
focused on what you have to do and what the task
Exactly.
at hand. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yes.
In
But I'm glad you
in your
brought that up because I do think public speaking, I think taking part in speech and debate, if that is
mhm,
available in a student's high school, I think it's so important to get practice, as much practice as possible in speech and debate, not just for those students interested in being an attorney, but just in life in general. I think it
mm,
will take you so far in terms of being able to, converse in a professional setting and to
mhm.
just sort of calm those nerves that you might be tempted to feel, when faced with an interview,
Yes.
or having to engage in public speaking.
I'm glad you're sharing this because
Yeah.
that actually leads to my other question. And in your experience, in your training that you've received, what are some of the most memorable things that you remember that have are helping you the most right now?
Oh my goodness. So when I was in law school, I interned as a prosecutor for the city prosecutor's office in Stark County, Ohio, in Canton, Ohio.
Mhm.
And one of the assignments that we had as interns was to we handled arraignment court. And so arraignment is the first appearance that a criminal defendant makes in court. So it's where the criminal defendant learns what they're charged with,
Okay.
and they decide how they want to plead: guilty, not guilty, no
Okay.
contest. And so
Mhm.
as an intern, it was my responsibility to cover arraignment court for the city prosecutor. And so on my first day of arraignment court, my boss said, all right, Mingo, you're up. It's your turn. So I grabbed my files and I went down to arraignment court, and I got all set up. I had my new suit on. I was ready to go. And I stood in front of the judge and I looked around, and I had assumed that my boss would stand next to me and sort of show me what to do. I had no idea. I'd never been in arraignment court. And he said, "You're on your own, kid." And he walked out of the, oh my God. I was absolutely mortified. Let me just tell you, my knees, literally, they were knocking against each other. Now, I didn't know that that was something that really could be done. I thought that's just something that you say. Well, my knees, I was so
Mhm.
nervous, my knees were knocking. My knees were literally knocking. I could not believe he left me all alone in arraignment court. I had no idea what to do, but I got through it. And from
Yeah.
that moment on, I knew, all I could do was give it my best. I had no idea, but the judge was more than happy to sort of walk me through what I needed to do. The prosecutor, defense counsel, they all understood what was going on. They were all sort of in on the joke. But it helped me to sort of face my fears, my courtroom fears, and to know that there really wasn't anything that I couldn't do. If I could face arraignment court with no training,
Wow.
so it was trial by fire for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow. I can only imagine.
yeah.
That experience either makes you or breaks you, and it
That's
certainly made
right.
you.
That's right. That's right.
Well, Judge Mingo, we have appreciated your time so much. We know
Oh,
you're taking just a short break to come and talk to us, and
thank you.
we know you're in the middle of a busy day, but it's been really, really enjoyable. We really thank you for being with us. Anything else you would like to tell our audience?
Yeah, I would just say, I'm going to go back to something you said. Be the best version of you. It may not be that college is for you. It may not be that a legal career or a career as a judge is for you. That's not the requirement. The requirement really is to be the best version of you, whatever that looks like, whether it's college, the military, trade school, whatever that is. Do it, and do it to the best of your ability.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, what a message. That's
Thank
right.
you.
There you have it, everyone. Be the best version of you.
Yeah.
Judge Mingo, thank you so much. We
Thank
really, really
you.
appreciate your
Oh,
time. We love having you, and we
thank you.
thank you so much for your service, for serving our community, serving
All right.
here in our city.
I
And
appreciate you inviting me on. Thank you so much.
all right, we
All
wish you
right.
the best, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Thank you.
All right.
And
Bye
to
bye.
all of our audience, thank you so much for being with us. We'll see you again on another episode of A Walk in My Shoes. Have a wonderful day.